Hello, G Captain readers. My last video was very emotional, very frustrating for me to produce about what we need to move forward with the U.S. Merchant Marine. How to rebuild American flag shipping. Very emotional topic, and I got a lot of feedback from industry leaders. I got a lot of leaders who shared my frustration and reached out to me, asking how they can help. And from mariners themselves, I got some mixed reaction. You know, I said that we always fight amongst ourselves, and there was some fight, some people telling me I'm wrong. There were actually memes on Facebook, which are pretty funny, directed right at me. And there was a lot of people asking the same question. How can I help? And I don't really have a good answer for that yet. But at the end of this video, I am going to ask you a question. And you can respond to that question via LinkedIn or the G Captain forum. And it's going to be a very simple question, almost a dumb question. And if you can answer that question, I believe we can move forward. But a big problem is that there is no simple solution. You have to understand some of the smartest Harvard, MIT trained CEOs, businessmen, engineers have been working on this problem for 30, 40, 50 years and have not solved it. Some of the best and brightest minds in our industry and really our nation have been trying to solve this problem. And some people call me arrogant to think that I could solve this problem. What makes John Conrad think that he can solve this problem? And everyone wants simple solutions that they can understand, linear solutions. But we do not live in a linear world. We do not live in a world where we can just provide simple answers. Not any longer. Maybe 50 years ago, but not today. Today is a day of complicated technology. And on Wall Street, you have advanced derivatives and hedge funds that operate multinationally. And there are a number of complexities involved. And one of the biggest problems I face is after my last video, I've been on the forum and I've been answering everyone's specific questions. How can we move forward? And there's a lot of frustration in my reply. Another question that I get continuously is, John, why can't you make shorter videos? That last video was 44 minutes long. And I got to tell you, I can't condense the complexities of the situation down into a tweet or a short 5-minute YouTube video with graphics and excitement and cool fonts. This is going to take some work, and it's going to require getting back to fundamentals and not challenging assumptions. And challenging assumptions is something that I have some skill in. And to explain how we're going to get back to fundamentals and challenge assumptions to combat the complexity of the modern world, I have to tell a story. I'm going to bring you back to 1991. Tell you the story of a problem that one man had. And I'm going to say that this story is based on true events, like movies. I can't tell the full story because we'd be here all week, but this is based on true events. A man named Mike Benizio was principal of an elite public school in America. He had nearly everything he needed for the success of his school. Now, this school was based in one of the most elite suburbs of New York. There were countless waterfront mansions. And the school was funded by local taxes, and the tax rate was so high. And this town was so liberal that it put a significant portion of those taxes into the school district. And the schools received public donations from some of the very wealthy bankers and CEOs living in this town. So he had almost unlimited wealth. He could pay an average of well over $100,000 for the teachers of his school. And he had access to some of the most brilliant minds. Nobel Prize winners were in the town and willing to help construct this school and make sure it succeeded. And this school was really known for two things. One was its special education program. So a lot of people who had children that were struggling in school sent their kids there, bought houses in the district to send their kids there. And it also had this elite program for the real gifted, for the people with extremely, extremely high IQs. And it was a small program, elite honors program for some of the best minds of the country. And this week, Benizio, who is a very good-natured man, he used to be a football player, and he loved to laugh. And he could belly over a laugh, and all his muscles would get into the laugh. But he was also strict. And he had two problems that week. There were two individuals that were trying to get into his elite program, which was very small number of students who were in this gifted program at the school. One of them was a man named Jay. Now, Jay had graduated top of his class at Harvard and then got a master's from Harvard, top of his class. Jay went on to win some of the highest awards in this country. The Upton Sinclair Award, the Eugene Meyer Award, the Benjamin Fine Education Award. He spoke many foreign languages, including Chinese. And he was the preeminent journalist in the nation on educational problems. He was working at the Washington Post at the time, writing articles on how to evolve the nation's educational system. Now, Jay had access to all the test scores and all the performance reports of the nation's top high schools. And what Jay set out to do was he wanted to write a book to solve one very basic problem. The problem, or the thing that Jay wanted to solve, was if you have an unlimited budget and extraordinary success, what principles do you use to teach the children of the elite? And can we take some of those principles and copy them into our regular schools, the schools that don't have the big budgets? What can we learn from the very best high schools? So he went and looked at all the high schools in the country, and he settled on one. Mr. Benizio's school. And he was asking Mr. Benizio to attend as a student, to attend these classes as if he was a student, even though he already graduated, had 2 degrees from Harvard. That was one guy. How do you get this adult enrolled in a school so he could take the test and learn with the classmates and really experience it from behind the desk? That was one. The other individual, Mr. Benizio thought was a joke. So this kid had come in earlier last week to his class, into his office, and had asked Mr. Benizio with a completely straight face if he could join this honors program. And this child, named John, was about as far from the Harvard J as possible. This kid lived in the district, but he lived in this broken down house that always needed repair. While all the other students showed up in Mercedes and BMWs, this kid showed up in the broken down diesel station wagon. When he didn't ride his, and he usually rode his bike to school. And this kid wore military surplus clothes from Salvation Army. This exact jacket. And cheap knockoff Ray-Ban sunglasses, which have some hipster appeal now, but back then were not good. And as he looked at this kid had come into his office, and he said, "I want to join your honors program." And Benizio, with his muscles, laughed so hard. He thought it was a joke. He was a joking man. And as the kid gave the transfer sheet to Benizio, he signed it thinking it was his joke. And other administrators and teachers came in and were laughing too. You know, just the chutzpah of this kid coming in and asking for this, that he had signed it as a joke. But now the kid wasn't showing up to his special education classes. And he had started attending these honors classes. As Mr. Benizio sat there with the folder, he looked at this kid. He had transferred in from public schools in the Bronx. He had gotten in many, many fights, knockout, drag-out fights with the kids who had teased him throughout in his school. This kid did not perform well in the special education classes. He was not a star student even in those limited classes. He struggled. And this kid had clearly dyslexia. This kid, it was noted, asked really dumb questions, fundamental questions that seem intuitive to anyone. He would ask his teachers. But this kid had some other things. The teacher said he had some sort of intelligence that they couldn't put their hands on. He was able basically to get around rules and figure out the kind of power dynamics in the school. Right? He was constantly getting in fights, but getting away with it. He was constantly getting time out of his teachers for special help. And this kid had done something that no other kid in the school had done. He had been told by Mr. Benizio he has to get his anger and frustration out in a different way. It couldn't be in his fists. And Benizio, a football guy who loved football, had suggested this kid, you need to join the football team. Get that frustration out in the field. And lacrosse and these other. And the kid had tried out, but he was not a gifted athlete. And he tried out for other sports, and the only one he got into was cross country. And the cross country guy said, we'll give you a chance, but this is really hard sport. And very hard to get into the varsity. But everyone gets a chance. We let anyone in. Anyone can run, and it depends on your level of hard work. And freshman fall year, this kid had received a varsity letter, youngest in his class. On top of that, miraculously, he was one of the youngest, if not the youngest person ever in the history of Mamaroneck High School to get a varsity MVP award in his freshman year. Benicio couldn't figure out this guy. And he had thought he was joking when this kid asked for his signature. And in his mirth, he had signed it thinking it was a joke. But now this kid clearly was not joking. So he sent his strongest, biggest security guard to pull this student out of this elite classroom and bring him to his office. And the kid came in and stood there blank-faced. Benicio asked John, Are you joking? You're kidding me with here. I thought it was a joke, but you signed up for these classes, these honors classes. Yes, sir. Do you think that you can pass any of these tests? I don't know, sir. What makes you think that you have the intelligence of these classmates? I'm not sure, sir. But you weren't joking asking to be in this honors class. No, sir. You realize that this class is just for gifted students, exceptionally gifted students, this track program. Yes, sir. So why do you want to be in this class? And this kid said, in the cross-country running, there were a couple kids in the running who were members of this gifted program. And these kids talked about these theories like Heidelberg's theories and Gödel's theories, and entropy and dynamics. And this kid said, I am fascinated by what they taught me running on this track team. Benicio said, did you understand these theories? The kid said, yeah, a little bit. Benicio said, I don't know what to do here. We're about to get national attention. We have the preeminent journalist of the nation coming to see these gifted kids, and you want to sit in this classroom? You're likely to embarrass us. And this kid said, well, when's he coming? How about I do a trial period? And Benicio finally figured out a way out. He knew this kid couldn't pass the exams in this gifted program. He knew this kid was going to fail. So he told himself, this is one of those self-correcting problems. I'm going to let this kid sit in for a semester. And he's going to see how impossible these exams are. And he's going to fail. And then we can slowly move him back into the special classes. But what he didn't understand is the power of dumb questions. You see, this kid had asked the dumbest question ever asked of a gifted program principal at an elite school. This kid with terrible grades had asked to be in an honors program. This kid was humorous. This kid made you laugh. And this kid made you laugh, not that he was funny, but he made you laugh just by the sheer audacity and stupidity of many of his questions. And this stupidity and audacity followed him through school and frustrated the hell out of his teachers. The number of hours Mr. Benicio spent with teachers over the next 4 years trying to solve this mystery of this kid named John. The number of hours he spent with this award-winning Harvard journalist trying to figure out what to do with this kid It became a major time suck because this kid would corner these teachers in their break period, in their lunch period, during their office hours, and he would ask the dumbest questions you've ever heard. This kid took the physics teacher once, cornered him, and said, "Sir, I don't understand this entropy. What is entropy?" Physics teacher said, "Well, it's a measure of chaos." And the kid goes, "What's chaos?" "Well, it's like a fire." The kid goes, so entropy is a fire?" "Well, sort of. A fire like a bonfire, a fire like a building fire, a fire like a little match fire, a controlled fire like a lighter, or a conflagration." "Well, it's not really fire, it's more energy." "So entropy is energy? What is energy?" You see the stupidity of these questions. And these teachers would get more and more frustrated. Some of them love these questions and spend hours and days helping this kid through. But most of the teachers got frustrated. Most of the students got frustrated with this kid asking these dumb questions in class. And some of these elite parents got frustrated and came to Mr. Benizio and said, "You got to kick this kid out of class. He's wasting everyone's time." But this child did very well. He graduated, almost straight A's. He went on to get 7 more varsity letters and MVP rewards and was recruited by top colleges in the nation. But this kid was strange. He didn't want to go to an Ivy League school. He wanted to go sail. He wanted to be a ship captain. So this kid went to a maritime academy, and he did even worse. He did fine in school because he figured a little trick out. He was always coming out with these tricks. And one trick was he could ask his fellow students all the dumb questions he wanted to, as long as he fed them beer. So he went and got jobs as a lunch driver and valet parker in order to pay for the beer for his classmates so he could ask these stupid questions. But it wasn't enough for him to ask his fellow students stupid questions. He went to the commandant of cadets. He'd see him walking by. And one day he went to the commandant and he said, "Commander Kenny, excuse me, sir. Why do I have to wear this uniform? Are you joking with me? Are you joking with me, Mr. Conrad?" "No, sir." "Well, the uniform's a matter of respect, something you obviously don't have." "Well, is the tie also something of respect, sir?" Your tie? Is your tie a matter of respect? You need to go back to class right now before you get yourself in trouble." "Okay." This kid starts walking away. "Excuse me, Cadet Conrad. You didn't say sir or salute when you walked away. Why do I have to call you sir?" Woo! So this kid ended up with a lot of demerits. Was almost kicked out numerous times. At one point led the entire school in demerits. Because he asked the dumbest questions. He asked questions that were so dumb, ridiculous. Ridiculous questions. And the only way he made it out is he had the work ethic to work off those demerits. He would spend weekends and hours after school chipping paint in the bilge of the Empire State to work off these demerits because he wanted to graduate. And he wanted to get his demerits down to enough level that he could ask stupider questions all the time. And this kid went out and he worked on tankers. And then he got recruited to drill ships. And there wasn't much real opportunity to ask stupid questions on drill ships, but he did anyway. And he loved asking dumb questions in the super complicated, complex world of the drill ships. It was one day he went into the geologist's shack, and the geologist is working. He walks in and goes, What is that you're working on? What is that thing? It's a rock. Well, why do you have a rock? I'm a geologist. What are you doing with the rock? I'm going to break it apart. How do you break a rock apart? With a hammer. Is that some sort of special geologist hammer? It's a hammer. It's a goddamn hammer. Get the hell out of here. We're trying to work. But he was able to find other people eventually who asked dumb questions. Like these two gentlemen from India had come in with a lot of money and asked the question, can we lease a drill ship and bring it to India and drill for oil? The CEO of this big drill ship company said, well, do you have seismic surveys? No. Do you have supercomputers if we get seismic surveys to decode the data? No. Have you done a hazard analysis? What's a hazard analysis? Well, it's a hazardous ID process to look for risk assessment. No. But hazard, is that a word? Well, it's a hazardous ID. It's an acronym. An acronym for hazards? These gentlemen went out to the drill ship and met this young man and asked him a bunch of questions. I ended up hiring the drill ship, going to India, and finding 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in 6 months. In fact, if you land into Mumbai Airport right now and you looking out and you see the most beautiful skyscraper in Mumbai and you think, what company lives in that skyscraper? It's not owned by a company. It is the private mansion of the Ambani family. These brothers, by asking these dumb questions to the CEO of Transocean, the hours he spent asking me the dumb questions, and my boss the dumb questions, when we brought the drill ship to India, he called up my company and said, one of the dumbest questions I ever heard. Can this guy, John, be chief mate? Can he be chief of this drill project? He said, well, he doesn't have a license. But why does he need a chief mate license to be chief mate? And they were so ruthless as these questions that they had given this young man a promotion to chief mate, even though he only had a second mate license. And now they're among the top 15 richest men in the world. Because dumb questions get down to the fundamentals. It doesn't matter, as my hero, Richard Feynman, says, it doesn't matter if you know the name of a duck and pass a test on a duck, and if you can explain how a duck lives in a very linear manner. This is a complicated world. Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize-winning physicist. Surely you're joking, Mr. Feynman. He said things taught in this book. So this is the book. This is The Godfather, Martin Stopford. And I'm about to say something that's sacrilegious to anyone in marine finance. Because this is the Bible of marine finance. And it's money. It's finance that we need to fund U.S. ships and U.S. mariners. This book, which I've read a few times, goes out and very clearly delineates what a charter is, what insurance is, the economics of shipping, and puts it in a very progressive, linear manner. And I suggest everyone reads this. It's a solid book, but this book does not contain the solutions. And I see Martin Stopford being sent as keynote speakers and all these marine finance and being brought in by experts. And he takes these complicated theories and he breaks them down into very simple linear solutions. But that is not how you solve major problems. This is how you make money with a very simple shipping company. But we don't have linear problems now. We've already had Martin Stoffords and other Harvard PhDs working on this problem, and we cannot solve it. So finally, I want to talk about a book. So this book about the elite school program for gifted students was written up. Jay Matthews, Class Struggles. You can look it up, all about this high school. He sat in the class next to this kid who asked the dumbest questions for years and wrote this book. But then something so complicated happened. Something so big and so complicated happened that every journalist around the world, top journalists, Pulitzer Prize winning journalists, best and the brightest around the world, dropped everything they were doing and flew to New Orleans, Louisiana, at a moment's notice. Read one of the best books of all time, The Smartest Guys in the Room, about the collapse of Enron, about the smartest guys who had created this company, Enron, that was so complicated and so collapsed that no one understood it. Well, you have to be a genius to create a company like Enron, but you have to be a lot smarter to break it down into the simplicity and write the book that this man did. This man was smarter than the Enron CEOs. And he dropped everything and went to New Orleans to figure out this complicated problem that no one could figure out. No one. And slowly, after the weeks went by, most of these journalists went home. They put their hands up and they said, we cannot solve the complexity of this problem. This is too difficult to figure out. This event, too big. And there's too much going on in order to break apart the geopolitical, the engineering, the pure physics of this problem. One guy flew down and he started talking to these journalists. And these journalists would ask problems like, hey, what is the hydrostatic pressure on the BOP relief valve? I said, well, what is a BOP? You go, I don't know. I'm a journalist. I say a blowout preventer. The journalist, well, what is that? I said, what do you think of blowout? What's blowout? I said, I don't know. And we break down these complexities to very simple terms. And after a few weeks, a few months, the head journalist at NPR is kind of leading this group that was remainder. Most of the brilliant journalists left. Said to this man, John, I think there's only one person in the world who can solve this complexity, the complexity of this thing, and I think it's you. And I think you should write the book on the BP oil rig disaster. And this man said, I am no Einstein. I was in the special program when I entered high school, Joe. I don't even know where to begin. How do you write a book? Well, you get an agent. How do you get an agent? Well, you got to talk to someone who knows an agent. Who knows an agent? I just said, well, I do. So I said, I'll talk to the agent, but I am not the intellectual. I cannot formulate all this thing. What my beauty is asking dumber and dumber and dumber questions till we get to the fundamentals of the problem. So I need the smartest journalist around. I need the best, the top, the Einstein of journalism today. Joe said, this is such a big problem, we'll do that. And he got Tom Schroeder, the smartest man I've ever known, to co-author. And in 6 months, we broke apart that problem. wrote this best-selling book. This book's now taught at a lot of law schools, Georgetown Law for one, because it's able to take this complicated thing and break it down into the simplicities. Now, you asked me to do this in tweets. You asked me to do this in shorter videos. I can't do that. It's a process. When you're dealing with Heisenberg and Gödel and the uncertainty principle and chaos theory and entropy, you need to break down the fundamentals. You need to understand the underlying concerns. You need to ask dumber questions. So, for example, in the forum, someone asked, why is U.S. shipbuilding so expensive? And I explained some of the intricacies. And one person got it in their mind, it's a real estate problem. We can't do it. Throw up our hands. It's impossible. Like Mr. Benizio said to this young kid, it's impossible for you to attend these classes. Don't even try. And I said to this guy, I said, well, why? He said, there's no real estate. We couldn't build the number of ships we need if we want to. Jones Act ships. We don't have the room in the United States. And I said, who said we have to build it in the United States? And he said, the Jones Act. The Jones Act. He's getting frustrated like my teachers did. Or that young man's teachers. But what is the United States, I'm saying to this guy? It's the United States of America. It's this country. I said, well, how many states are there? He said, 50. I said, is that, so these ships have to be built in these 50 states? Is that what you're telling me the Jones Act said? I said, is that all? Are you sure they can't be built anywhere else? He goes, I guess they could be built in Puerto Rico. And I said, well, actually, there's already a shipyard design in Puerto Rico. There are plans to build one. But I said, out of all these 50 states, what is the biggest state? He said, well, Alaska. I said, there's no room. We were talking about building 200 ships. There's no room to waterfront real estate to build 200 ships in Alaska? And this party got really mad. He said, you're making fun of me. You're patronizing me. I said, no, I'm really not. I'm really not. So we have to get past those assumptions, and we have to get past the anger. I anger a lot of people. A lot of people think I'm being a wise. A lot of people think I'm making fun of them. A lot of people get frustrated asking these questions, continually asking why till we get to the fundamentals of the problem. But that is what we need to do. That is how we move forward in the U.S. Merchant Marine. We don't move forward by asking Martin Stafford to come in and create a linear analysis. We ask by starting from zero assumption. And we don't do it from the offices of Oxford and Clarkson's. We do it by getting down, as Jay did in Mamaroneck High School, getting down boots on the ground and talking, pretending they're a student. That's why I asked for a Senate investigating hearing. We got to get in the shipyards and ask the workers, ask the managers, ask where the problem is. Years ago, there was a Jones Act convention of all the big players, and they're sitting down. Some billionaires were in the room. Some economists were in the room. And they're talking about this real estate problem. And someone said there's no real estate. And they said, all right, we moved down. And this guy, John, raised his hand. And they said, are any of you commercial waterfront real estate experts? He said, no. I said, well, you know, we're at the New York Yacht Club right now in this room, this smoke-filled room of all these maritime experts. But a couple blocks from here is one of the biggest commercial real estate developers in the world. How about I go knock on their door and invite them over for lunch? They laugh. They all laugh like Benizio had laughed. They all laugh. What would these guys come here for lunch? Shipping transports 90% of world trade. Every construction, every material for these big building projects comes on ships. Why wouldn't he come for lunch? Why wouldn't this be a priority for the top real estate? Why can I not walk into the CEO's office? Why can I not walk into the CNO's office in the Pentagon and ask him a dumb question about how we are going to get supplies? Getting down to theory, Admiral, do you know how much larger the Pacific is than all of the other oceans? Do you know the physics of getting 1 metric ton? How much energy is required to get 1 metric ton of cargo up in the air versus on a flat ocean? Do you know the physics behind why planes are so much less efficient? Do you understand the fundamental physics? Relativity theory. What does relativity theory tell us about the relative movement of supplies overseas in a war? Their weights, their volumes, and so forth. So this is the power of dumb questions. I was able to write this. I somehow got into this honors program. I'm still not sure how. And it's not just me. Go to Mumbai. Go on Google Earth right now and look at the Ambani brothers. I could tell you the dumb fundamental questions they asked. And not only that, the Ambani brothers told me one thing. They asked me 3 dumb questions. They said, 1, John, and they were Indians, John, is not the future wealth tied to the Moore's Law and future technology? I said, yeah, that makes sense. Is not the best technology in California? Yeah, that's Silicon Valley. And why don't you live in California? And that simple answer I could not ask. So I packed up in the early 2000s, my beautiful Manhattan apartment. I put everything in and I went to Silicon Valley. And I realized there's all this complexity and all these communications and social media. But these guys, the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jack Dorseys of the world, they spent a lot of time on the phone. And back then, no one really was paying attention to Silicon Valley, so they spent a lot of time in coffee shops. And I went there and I sat at the coffee shops. And these guys answer my dumb questions. And to this day, the first COO of Facebook and I still get on the phone every once in a while, and he asks me dumb questions, and I ask him dumb questions. And these guys love dumb questions because dumb questions gets to the fundamental. So looking at the success of the Ambani brothers and the complexity, nothing's as complex as the algorithms, the AI, the social media, the fundamentals of cloud computing and derivatives of the tech world. And I can tell you firsthand, it doesn't come from their overachieving intelligence, although they have that in spade. It comes from breaking it down to the fundamentals and building from there. That's why the 5 top tech companies in the U.S. account for over 25% of the market cap of the entire S&P. That's what we need to do with the Merchant Marine. But I have a job, and writing this book took 6 months. There's an abundance of smart people. There's an abundance of money. There's abundance of everything, but there is an abundance of time. And all of you guys ask, how can I help? And they all tell me what John Conrad, John, you should write the article on this. You should talk to this person. You should visit Washington. You should start an investigation yourself. It doesn't come from an individual. It comes from a team. It comes from you guys. I can't start a GoFundMe for myself and then pay myself off of the GoFundMe to help the U.S. Merchant Marine. I don't even think that's legal. So how do we bring together these team of very smart people who are willing to, other people who are willing to ask the dumb questions and give them the authority to go into the shipyards, to go into the shipping companies, to travel on ships, to do what Jay Matthews did with Class Struggle? And how do we come up with a funding structure in order to put the pieces in place to get this team together? And I called on Mitch McConnell to do a Senate hearing. I think that's probably the easiest way, is if a senator reaches out. But how do we convince the senator? Which senator can we convince? So I don't think this could be a grassroots effort. I don't think it could be easier. But here's my dumb question I want you to answer on LinkedIn or the forum is, how do we get the funding how do we get someone to fund? Because I've been able to do many things over the years, but the Imbrani brothers, they were self-funded. They put all of their dumb questions into building a power plant in India and used that money to hire the drill ship. Zuckerberg asked dumb questions. He started small and built internally until he could get the VCs on board and find VCs like Peter Thiel, who also asked dumb questions. And I've been able to ask dumb questions of the ski community, and I raised with my brother $6 million for our ski site in 9 months. But the maritime world, when I go and ask them the dumb questions, and then the dumbest questions of all, hey, can you give me a few $100,000, $1 million to start G Captain? They laugh. They think it's funny. So I don't want this money or this system. But we need someone not only to write a check, but support it. Who? Is it a congressman, senator? And without me going out and interviewing 1 million people, they always say, oh, you should talk to him. You should talk to him. You should talk to him. And I go down and we talk and the thing, and it doesn't happen because I ask them questions and they don't write the check and they laugh and they say they want to help, but they don't want to help. How do we convince them to give the money to people like Sal Mercogliano, who are Einstein level, or Captain Joe Hansen, Yo Hallam, and Guam from SUNY Maritime and Kings Point, who have done this already in New York? Take this amazingly difficult, complicated problem of how do you get the trucks off of the streets in New York, broke it down with a lot of dumb questions to the simplicity, the pain points, found the worst pain point in Hunts Point, went there and talked to people, lived there, counted trucks, counted cargo, talked to the people loading those cargo, wrote a report, the waterborne transportation in New York, gave it to the Senate, and got $60 million grant. That's the process, guys. We have to kill the assumptions and get down to the base layer fundamentals. Then get boots on the ground and then figure out ways to build up. But I can't do it. I don't need your suggestions. So the dumb question is, how do we find that person or that organization that can hold this? Pay salaries for these people. Pay for the travel for these investigations. And put up with me and other people, the other people we want to recruit, to ask really, really dumb questions. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm excited that I finally got through a video without tears coming down. But it's important to me. People say, John, do you need help? And I say, watch the video. I was literally crying for help. But I can't do all the work alone. We need to find those people who can hold this and support this. Thank you.